Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you would mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate that. I also love it when people leave comments, so if you have suggestions for videos or constructive criticism, or if you just want to tell me how you do things, because I'm always interested in that, those are great ideas. I love to have comments like that. So I just went to a gem show last week, so I got a bunch of new stones that I'm excited to make stuff out of. And I got a couple of pieces of petrified palm wood that are kind of flattened bullet shape, sort of spade-like, but rounded on both sides. And I think they were meant to be used for earrings because they're kind of matched, but I think I want to make kind of a torque-like open-ended bangle bracelet with those on the ends. Where they kind of pass each other by, and we'll see how that looks. I think it'll be kind of cool. I've made a couple of bracelets like that, and people seem to like them a lot. So we'll give this one a try with these stones. I have some ideas about how I'm going to make the band. What I drew up kind of reminds me of the Bauhaus movement. Before we get started, I wanted to thank some groups of people, my patrons over on Patron. They're my core group of supporters, and I want them to know that I am truly honored that they've decided to become part of the community that we've created over there, and I really respect their knowledge and what nice people they are. So thank you for signing up for my Patreon. The other group of supporters is my YouTube channel, and we just passed 14,000. We're getting close to 4,100, and that's awesome and amazing. Thank you so much for that. I get some of the nicest comments in the YouTube comment section on my videos, and I wanted to thank you for that. Sometimes I get pretty tired doing 3 videos a week, and knowing that you are getting something out of these helps to keep me going. So thank you for that, and I appreciate it. I also appreciate the financial support, like the super thanks and the buy me a coffees. Those things really help with the cost of silver right now, so thanks for that. All right, well, with those things being said, let's get started on this project. This is one of my design idea books, which are available in my merch store. Recently I've started putting conversion charts on the backs of some of them to make them even more useful. I like them to draw up my design ideas before I make a piece because it helps me to come up with a more concrete idea in my mind. But these make them even more useful. This one is fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters, which I find really useful since I'm trying to use millimeters more. But they have this nice grid pattern in the background, which helps me to sketch up my ideas a little more neatly, since I'm not terribly good at drawing. Today's project is going to involve these 2 little pieces of palm wood, which I think are kind of cool. Palm wood's sort of polka dotted, and they appear to be agatized or jasperized, whichever you prefer. And so I'm going to make 2 bezels that are going to fit around this side of them like this. So they're going to sit out here like little kind of shovel ends or spades and be bezel set in there. But you can see why I'm going to have to, especially the way they're functioning on this piece of jewelry, why I'm going to have to glue them in, because that's going to be in a spot where they cross over next to each other like this and are on a wrist. So there's a good chance that they could get bumped loose if you didn't have them some sort of adhesive in there. There's just not enough room to really get a good grab on them. So I'm curious how other people do stones when they have not much to grab onto like this, whether they have to resort to glue as well. But, I'm making this 182 millimeters long, which is a little, I think it's a 6.5 inches or something like that. And I'm going to make the bezel 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip, which is 4.76 millimeters tall, and I probably won't shorten it at all. I'm going to take a piece of 12 gauge square, which I flattened into kind of a thick sort of border to put around the bottom of that bezel, and we'll solder those both down onto some 18 gauge or 18 gauge sterling sheet. So after we do those bezels, I'm going to use 10 gauge square wire to create this pattern. In my mind, I'm thinking maybe I should taper them down a little bit so that the junctures between these things are distinct rather than just kind of flowing in there. But I'm not sure. I still haven't made that decision yet, and I'll probably have to make that decision before I'm done. But this is just pieces of 10 gauge square sterling. So, but first let's make that bezel, and then we'll get going on the rest of it. Like I said, this is a little bit thicker than some of the stuff. Sometimes I use 28 for really delicate stones. 26 is a little bit thicker, so a little bit more durable, especially in a situation where it's going to be on the ends of a bracelet. I suppose you could use sterling for this, but it's going to be super hard to shape around one of these stones like that. I think when we do the end of this, where we're going to join the two together, we need to do it on one of the sides here. We don't want to do it on an end because it's going to be hard to get it measured exactly when you're making it that sharp of a bend right there, because it's kind of flat on either end. So we'll end it in the middle here. And to do that, I'm just going to kind of manually shape it, but I'm going to estimate how far back here to curve it around like that. Alright, I'm just going to kind of get that as tight as we can, and we'll make a little scratch. I'm going to give myself just a little tiny bit of room extra to work with. Not much. But that's where we'll cut it off. And then file it down just a skosh to make sure it's nice and flat. This is the week or two, I should say, where all of the big gem shows come to Denver. And so we went to one the other day, and there's a bunch of them are all around Denver, so we're going to go to some different ones later this week. It's always fun to shop, but I have a bit of a stone problem. I'm trying to think more practically these days when I go shopping for stones, because since I'm doing the YouTube channel, I have kind of more of an agenda to come up with unique and different things. So I have to look for more unique and different kinds of shaped stones and stuff like that, and replenish a lot of the pretty ones of my old ones that I've already used up. So there's a there are certainly a lot of pretty stones though to choose from. I could I mean, I always go over budget when I do this, but you can get out of control with buying stones sometimes. And they seem like they've gone up quite a bit since I shopped last. It's been a couple of years since I did any real shopping. But I guess everything's a little more expensive right now. Just kind of reshaping it a little bit. Kind of into an oval. Oh, I wanted to thank everybody who's bought my ebook, which is a guide to my 2023 YouTube videos. It has a page for each of the videos, which has a picture of the product, the drawing that I drew, a list of materials you need, a difficulty rating, which is sort of subjective on my part, and then some notes I made about each of the projects, about things I noticed when I was doing them, or things I would do different, stuff like that. And so thank you, those of you who bought it. I think it's a good way to have access to a whole bunch of information about different silversmithing projects right at your hand, right in your hands. That looks not too bad size-wise. It's a little loose, but I'm going to have to fit a little glue in there too, and that takes up some volume as well. So I think we're going to call that good. I am going to try and get it to be a little squared off more on the ends, because that's just the way they are. In most situations with a bezel, I use pretty thin sheet on the back, but in cases where it's going to be structurally important, as in this case, because it's a bracelet and it's going to be right at the end of the wires, I'm going to use some thick sheet. I think I'm going to use 18. I have a little piece floating around here somewhere. There it is right there. So we'll solder this down on here. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder for pretty much everything. with the occasional little bit of easy on some things, but not very often. And I use a liquid flux, which I drip on with a little eyedropper. The torch I use is a Silversmith model, which is their acetylene air version. That's a great torch, I love it. And those are most of the questions I get asked about that kind of stuff. So let's solder this on here. I'm going to flux it, dry the flux, and then I'll put a couple of pieces of solder in there so they touch both the bottom and the side. And then with something like this, the big challenge is I'm using really thick 18 gauge sheet, which I think is 2.01 millimeters thick, I think, if I remember right. So it's pretty thick sheet, and there's a lot of mass to it compared to the bezel, and so when you're heating it, it's easy to get the bezel overheated before you get the bottom piece up to the temperature it needs to be for the solder to really flow. So that's why people putting heavy sheet on the back of bezels when they first start melt a lot of bezels, and that usually is the culprit. Yeah. I think I need to clean my tweezers. Sometimes when you're using these cross-lock tweezers a lot, they get kind of gummed up with dried flux, or they get misaligned a little bit. You can usually correct most of that if they start being hard to pick things up with by just filing in a little bit. We'll kind of direct the heat mostly to the big thick sheet on the bottom and kind of avoid the bezel. If you want, you can set it up to where you can heat it from the bottom by bridging it across something, or using one of those tripods with a mesh. A lot of people use those. Looks like we got a good seam on there. I want this to have, this is that 12 gauge square wire that I ran through the rolling mill just a little bit to flatten it out so it's thin in this dimension and spreads it out a little bit this way. I'm going to use that as kind of a border at the base to give it a step going around it. And to do that, I need to make sure it gets a really nice tight fit around here. So I'm going to spend some time shaping it in order to get it to, when I solder it together and slide it over there, it's snug, so that when we solder it together, it looks like a single unified piece. This is a verbose way of saying what I was trying to say. I am a little verbose today when I'm trying to explain things, and I apologize for that. Some days I'm concise. Some days I just kind of wander around verbally. I think today is one of those latter days. Same on this one as far as getting it tight around here. I'm going to have the middle part of it kind of meet over on the side there. So again, we'll probably use my round nose pliers to kind of get a start on this. Remember how the end's got kind of a flattish spot on this? So I'm going to have to kind of shape this manually. Once I got the one side pretty close, just going to pull it up tight against there, and then I'll use a marker to mark where I want the bend to really start. So right there, kind of. That'll help direct my way I'm bending this a little bit. I'm running one underneath the other one so that I can lay it over the top here. And I'm actually pretty close there. It makes it so I can kind of just lay it next to it, like that. And then I can make a mark
And I can see that I have a little excess space right there, so I can kind of compensate for how long I cut this by taking just a little bit more off, because that'll pull inwards. But you definitely want this to be pretty close to the right size, because if you don't, you'll have an uneven solder around the inside where this border goes around the outside of the bezel where they solder together. We want that to look neat. So yep, I think we'll be good. So I'm going to solder this close. I do something called pick soldering, which is where I am able to pick up a little bit of solder on the end of this soldering pick, heat the piece up to the temperature that the solder flows at, and touch it where I want it to go. And it's a great way to place solder really precisely. So if you're interested, I have a video up here. You can check that out. It's one of those skills that speeds things up and kind of allows you to do some things you couldn't do before. And so I think it's one of those ones that's useful to learn. It certainly increased the number of possibilities for me as far as what I was capable of doing. Oops, I missed. There we go. I think that'll work. I am going to spend a little time cleaning it up with the file, so it's all nice and symmetrical and flat on both sides and everything. And then we'll slide it on here and solder it. Okay. I use the Dremel to clean up the sides just a little bit to make everything, I could have pickled it for a while, but I was just trying to save a little time. Okay, I'm just trying to get it pushed down there as tightly as I can towards the bottom, because we want to get a nice clean seam, not only where it joins the bezel and this border on together, but also on the base where the base is attached. So I'm just going to pick a little solder in there. So when the solder liquefies, it has a tendency to wick along seams, because it acts like most liquids, which kind of like have a capillary action. And so, if I get some over here, it should kind of pull these together. In theory. Pushing it down to make sure it's sitting all the way down. We'll add a little bit more solder. Okay, I think we got a seam all the way around. We'll see in a minute. I think we got a good seam in both spots all the way around. It appears to me anyway. We can also trim it off and then file it, and that'll tell us for sure. Of course, you can use your saw if you want to for this. Now I'm just going to file this flush. Alright, so that's what it's going to look like. And then it's going to sit this way on the bracelet with two different bands that start from the base here and then start doing their pattern thing. So I'm going to let this pickle, and I'm not going to make you watch me make a second one of these, but I'll be back and we'll start working on the band part. So after I threw those in the pickle, I cut 3 pieces, about the right length that I needed for these. It worked out to be each one of these. Let me see if I can point where I'm talking about. So from here, right, at least from where it's going to butt up against the bottom of the bezel there, over to here was 28 millimeters, and then from this one to here was 28 millimeters, and the same way over here. I didn't particularly work to make it exactly 28 millimeters, but it kind of worked out that way. So, but I think it'll make it look pretty symmetrical then, which I kind of wanted to do. I cut these a little bit long for each of these pieces, and I didn't measure them. I just kind of held up the piece of wire to them and then decided that was going to be long enough to get down there. So we'll bend it and then we'll cut it off to be flat like that. And I think we'll start with this piece and this piece, and then do this piece and this piece, and we'll see what we can come up with. So probably going to use my round nose, or not round nose, my nail making pliers. And so I think let's start with this one. I'm going to use the biggest part on here. Let's see if we can't kind of roll it around here. Square wire, when you bend it, it has a tendency to try to twist on you, so you might need to correct this sort of stuff when we're doing this. That's not too bad, but let's see where we're at. So I got a steeper bend than I had intended, so I'm going to try and flatten that back out a little bit. I think that's okay. So what I really need to do now is file this so it's parallel to this one. I think that's a good starting point. We can do a little more fine tuning. Let's do the end of this one too. Try to remember not to angle it quite so far. Let's solder that. I have a little bit of solder left here, so. So my tank is getting really low, so I may have to change that before I finish this video. We'll see, because once you start to add the mass to this thing, it's going to get harder and harder to get up to temperature. So when I have a torch that's running out of gas, that's probably going to be a problem. Let's see if I can't at least get all of the component pieces made, and then go from there. I want these to be nice and flat, so I might use the miter vise jig just to try and get these as straight as I can. These are handy if you've never seen them. They allow you to do nice 45s and 90-degree angles. You know, the curve isn't perfect, but that's pretty close. So I think we're all right. We got this one here. This one here. Now we just need to figure out these other two wires. Okay, I think I'm going to solder that together. I have it kind of how I like it to look. And that'll make it easier to bend this one down to the correct length and everything. So let's get that soldered together. So right about here is where it needs to start coming down. But I guess maybe we should put this one on here first. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing I did on this other one. I'll be right back. I did a lot of, filing and shaping to make those line up kind of nice. So I need to solder it here and here. And this is where we're really going to be pushing the limits of this torch that's running out of gas. Because we've started to add a significant amount of mass to this thing, so it takes a little more heat to get it up to those flow temperatures. Okay, I think I'm going to change my tank before we do the last step, so I'll be back. So I got a magnesia block out and I kind of carved a little space in it so I could push one of these bezels down to the level where these two ends of the bracelet band will be attaching to the bottom. So we'll just go ahead and heat this whole thing up. I changed my tank so I have some more gas to work with, and we should be able to solder that on there. Then we'll flip it around and do the other side. A lot more mass in the band here than there is in the bezel, so a lot of the heat's going to go there first. Got to make sure to get it close to the soldering temperature, but not hit the soldering temperature over here because this is hanging out in the air. So I want to get it almost there and then bump it up over here. Bump it just over. If I wasn't lazy, I'd support that with something. good.
Okay, I'll let that pickle for a while, and then I'll polish it up, and then I may just set the stones in there when I show you at the end, but then I'll glue them in afterwards so I can get some good pictures.
Okay, so like I said, I haven't glued these in yet, but I put them in their bezels, and I got it kind of shaped how I want it. I'll do some final polishing up and gluing and things, and then I'll get some pictures. But I think that's kind of what I was looking to do. I like it. If anything, I might make it slightly longer next time. It's a little on the small side for a bracelet, but we'll get that cleaned up nice, and we'll get some nice pictures. So.
Okay, well that was the open bangle bracelet with the end caps made out of petrified palm wood. I hope that you enjoyed that video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button before you leave. That really helps a lot. And leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what you think. And also, before you go, check out my main channel page. I have over 370 YouTube videos now. I put out 3 a week, and so there's a ton of content there. And if you enjoyed this one at all, there's almost certainly something else you'll enjoy over there. So go check those out and maybe subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. The other thing is, check out the video description down below. There's links down there that are important. There's a link to my ebook down below, which is a guide to 2023's video tutorials, of which there were like 175 or something. There's a link to where you can buy those design idea books that I showed you. And there's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that community. There's several other links there that are important, so check those out too, and then come back and visit again. So take care, happy silversmithing.